everyone. Welcome back to the Sisterhood of the Rose podcast. I'm Jess.
And I'm Lily.
And we are talking about a super fun topic today that Lily and I both love, human design. But we're going to talk about it in such a different way. And it's really about the embodiment of human design. And I'm currently in a course, a program with some human design mentors that really inspired this conversation today. And it's been so profound. So I'm going to dive into it and we're just going to kind of talk about my design and what I'm learning and what I'm applying into my life. I think that's the piece that always gets missed with human design is it's like you can learn it so much, but it's like the application piece. And like I studied human design. I did a whole, I think it was like a 4-month long program a few years ago and was bringing it into my business. And then I kind of, I got some out of it, but then I let that go. And then now I'm kind of coming back to it, but in like a whole different way of like, okay, actually living my design. So we're going to talk about that today.
Yes. So this episode was my idea because I've been hearing tidbits from Jess about her program, and I've never done a human design course before. And so I usually refer to Jess with my questions, and I could just tell how much she was loving it. And I was like, we need to do a podcast on what you are learning and what you're implementing too, because like I think we've all fallen into that trap of like, we have all these systems, but it's like not useful unless we can put it into practice. So that's what I'm really excited about today. It feels like to me, the course that you've been doing, Jess, has been a little bit more focused on the implementation too, in terms of like giving you things to actually do day to day and stuff. So I'm just so interested. Can't wait to hear everything you have to share.
Yeah, and it's been like laser focused on myself, which has been so nice. I mean, there's definitely things that like we'll probably talk about with Lily's design as well, just because I know her design like pretty well at this point, but it's been like really nice to just like hyper focus on myself and be really in that exploration. So, yeah, I'm just going to dive into it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, well, the program, first of all, that I am doing, it is called Kiss Goodbye to Your 9 to 5, and it is ran by these two amazing women and human design mentors. Their names are Shayna and Dana, and their company, their business name is Dayluna. So shout out to them. We'll put their information in the show notes so that listeners, if you want to learn human design and want to learn your own human design, I definitely recommend checking them out, going to their website. They have a free chart generator. Even looking at their Instagram has so much just really valuable information. Lily and I were just talking about that before we hopped on. So they're a really good, if you want to learn human design, they're my top number one human design mentors for sure. Because today is really focused, like I said, on not just explaining different parts of human design, but really talking about how I'm implementing it into my life and what that looks like. And yeah, really living from my design. So, and the program is called Kiss Goodbye to Your 9 to 5. For those listening, I've been in a work transition, career transition for over a year now. And so it really, the reason why I felt so called to sign up for this was it's a program solely specific on focusing on how to implement living your design from a career focused place, which I think is so powerful. And so that's been really interesting too. I'm still really getting into the nitty gritty of that. It's not like, oh, I'm just going to come out of this and think I want to be like a doctor or something. It's more just how you operate in life and what your natural gifts are. So yeah, I mean, we're only 3 weeks into it at this point, and we started off by really diving into our type, our energy type. So I'm a manifesting generator in human design, and manifesting generators are they move fast, just similar to manifestors. Like they move so fast. We're quick, but we're also just like on such a non-linear path with our life, which has been so reflected in my life and my career. I'm in my third career transition of like completely switching industries because I'm switching industries again at the moment. And it's not an easy thing. It's like, society teaches us and preaches to us that we need to be on this linear path. And manifesting generators are constantly in a death and rebirth cycle, I feel like. And they're meant to be. So, anyways, the biggest thing that I really have taken away around like my type has been noticing how not present I am. And that is something that's really big for manifesting generators and generators, because manifesting generators are a combination of the manifestor and the generator. And Lily's a generator, so she's like nodding her head because she knows like the importance for generators and manifesting generators to be present, like literally present in everyday life, which you could think like, oh yeah, I'm present. But if you really think about it, are you? Or are you in your mind? And anyways, so the first week was just focusing on how to deeper come into our type and deeper embody our energy type. And the main focus for generators and manifesting generators was like, are you present? And I started to just notice how every little moment, like even in the little moments, when I'm making breakfast, I'm thinking about what I'm going to do after. Even before breakfast, I'm thinking about what I'm going to make for breakfast. Right when I get up, I'm thinking about, okay, when am I going to eat? What am I going to eat? When am I going to have my coffee? Like I'm not even enjoying my morning walk. I'm thinking about what I'm doing after that. And so it's really been this journey of noticing when I'm thinking about something and I'm not in it in the moment. And so that was kind of, I was like, wow, I did not realize how not present I am and how I miss out on so many things. And I feel like I don't even get to enjoy the things that I'm doing because I'm constantly thinking about what I need to do next.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really grounding, I would say, is like, okay, coming into that space of noticing that, and then actively in the little everyday moments is where I think it makes the biggest difference of noticing when I'm thinking about what I need to do next, instead of just like being in that moment and being with my senses and being with my body.
Wow.
So that was the biggest thing around being a manifesting generator. But
yeah,
there's so much.
That's like, I mean, we were talking a little bit back and forth about this, but it's just funny because I literally wrote a post a couple days ago where I was just saying this about myself too, about like how I'm doing something and I'm thinking about what I'm going to be doing next. Like I'm eating and then I'm thinking about, while eating, what I'm going to be doing next. It is so crazy when you really can like look at it, because it's like we're constantly future projecting out of the current moment. And it's like at the end of my post, I was like feeling really called to be like, do you really want your whole life to feel like you are future projecting like your whole life? Like what's the point, of life if you're never there? And I was just really feeling that for myself too. And I'm a generator, so we share that theme of needing the present. So I love that you shared that. And I think even if you're not a generator, I don't think it can hurt to be a little more present.
Totally. And like the big emphasis on generators and manifesting generators is the sacral response, the body. And when we're in our minds all the time, constantly future projecting, as Lily said, and just thinking about what's coming next. And again, I really emphasize the little day-to-day moments, because it's the little day-to-day moments that add up to the bigger picture when you don't even realize it. And so I feel like so many times for me, I'm like, well, I don't know what I want. And I can't really, I didn't really get a body response from that. And it's like, well, yeah, because I wasn't in my body. I wasn't even, when an opportunity came to me, I was just thinking. I wasn't just like being in my presence. And so that's why like really getting into your body in any way, whether that is through breathing or meditating or moving, and and really just allowing yourself to just like be in your body and not think for a second is how you cultivate that awareness. But also, I feel like diving into your senses, like when you're eating, like really tasting your food, like not just eating, like being like, oh my gosh, like, am I enjoying this? Like, does this actually taste really good to me right now? And, or when you're like, your touch, smell, like engaging the five senses in any way is the best way to become present, even in like the little moments. You can literally, like Dayluna, they gave us this exercise that's like, okay, when you're trying to become present, they're like, okay, what are five things that I can see right now? What are three things that I can feel right now? Or four things? What are three things that I can hear right now? What are two things that I can smell right now? And what's one thing that I can taste right now? I don't know if that was like the exact order, but that's just an example of an exercise that they gave us to do really quickly of checking in with ourselves and really activating and turning our senses online, which I thought was so interesting as well, because it's like, how many times do we really do that? And we're gifted these five senses for a reason, and I feel like I always take advantage of them. And it's like such a beautiful gift to have all five.
Yeah, it's so true. And I just keep thinking about like how this drops into our nervous systems and how our like collective nervous system operates in a more like chaotic way, just like based on our society. Like we don't have time to like smell the roses, right? Like we're just constantly in motion. But yeah, the senses, I think, I mean, from a nervous system perspective, and like that's what I focus on in my business in many ways, in terms of how I help clients. But coming at it from the senses definitely like turns on the body. They're like entry points almost. And one that I really like to use is taste, because taste is my, what is it in human design? Cognition?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my cognition, or okay, yeah.
Strongest sense.
So,
It just makes more sense to people.
uh-huh.
But yeah,
Right.
cognition.
Yeah, so that's my like strongest sense. So that's something that I like to lean into for presence specifically. And I've had insights via taste too. So it can be like an avenue for intuition. I think like your strongest sense and your senses in general. But yeah, it's like the nervous system ability to sense is very much rooted in parasympathetic side of things versus the sympathetic activation, fight or flight idea. So it's like if you can sense things, then you're in a state of receivership in some way, or even just a state of peace, joy, okayness. It doesn't have to be like you're in bliss, but you can access that part of your nervous system as well. So it's kind of like hitting a bunch of different buckets at once.
Wow, I really like that. I love how you said it's the entry point into like something, our nervous system or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. I really liked
Yeah.
that. The senses are the entry points.
Yeah, I think so. Like it feels like to me in my experience, experimenting with them can be like entry points, access points to changing a state if that's what you're wanting to do, or if it's just to be more present. 100% most of the time that I'm like entering into my nervous system through a scent, like a scent or like a taste or something, I'll start to like salivate more, like maybe I'll yawn, and that's just like my body kind of coming down, recalibrating. So it's just interesting how this is kind of getting a little broad, but I think that our human design type and the suggestions there kind of weave in with supporting our nervous systems in a big way, because the human design is so body focused. So that's just kind of another thing that I've been interested about, kind of like the interconnections, and I've seen them play out for myself specifically.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And human design is really body focused, and it's really energy focused, like the energetics, which is so big and something that I think we can always feel, but we're really not taught how to become aware of. And so I think that that is what appeals. One of the things that appeals so much to me about human design is really coming into that awareness of how you operate energetically. And if that confuses you, it's just learning your human design. It will make so much more sense. And so, yeah, the big piece with, I mean, everybody, but manifesting generators and generators specifically is that presence so that we can be in our bodies, because our strategy is to respond, which just means that life is constantly presenting things to us. And then our bodies are giving us a response of like a yes or no. And it comes from the body, not the mind. And that's the idea of us being guided in a way that feels easeful and effortless, where we don't have to think about it all the time. And it's so much easier said than done. But this presence piece is really what cultivates that. And so it's just something that I challenge everyone listening to just, it's like, even when you're done listening, just notice in your little day-to-day moments if you're actually being present or if you're thinking about the next thing, and just do what you can to bring yourself truly back into the moment and just see how it makes you feel. Because for me, it immediately just, it is a nervous system thing, because I immediately feel like and I'm like, okay, I don't have to worry about what I'm doing 30 minutes from now. I'll do it when I'm there. And we're not saying like don't plan out your life, because of course you have to plan out your life. Like I have a calendar that I put everything on, but that's why I put literally everything on my calendar, so that I don't have to worry about it. And so that I'm reminded of like, oh yeah, I have that today. Oh yeah, I have that today. And so that actually helps me to be more present.
Yeah, I love that. It's like a kind of backwards setting yourself up from the back end. Yeah, because it's like the less you can put on your mind to be the reminder, but also be the figure outer of the day. Like the less pressure I think you can put on the mind, just the better. And if that looks like for you scheduling things, then, do it. And I think that works probably in different capacities for each person in terms of like how you like your day to flow. If you like a lot of space to, do your own thing, or if you like to like have some structure. But I think that some element of structure usually for most people is pretty appropriate.
Totally. And for me, it's like I even put when I'm going and hanging out with friends on my calendar, because otherwise I'll forget. And it's not that it's like not important to me. It's just that it's that presence piece. I'm just really realizing that is what allows me to be present, is like knowing, okay, this is on my calendar, so I'm not going to forget about it. And I'm going to get the reminder, and then I'll be there, and I won't overbook myself. And so that's been key for me lately. But yeah, the flowing of the schedules is totally something that's individualized and is also in your design, but we're not going to go that deep today. But yeah, so that's, I would say, the big piece. There's so much that we can go into with energy types, but that's the really big key piece that I took away from this, was just realizing like, okay, I know this cognitively, but I'm not living it. And so that's been really something that I've been challenging myself these last 3 weeks, is really being present. And then the next, well, there's two really big things, but the next really big thing that I was like, whoa, was learning about the conditioning in my undefined centers, which again, I knew, but it was like seeing it play out in real time in my life. And so for those listening, there's 9 energy centers in the human design system that are adapted from the chakra system. So, the chakra system is 7 chakras. Human design actually has 9. We're not going to go into all of them. Again, shout out to Dayluna. You can learn from them what they all are, but we're going to talk about the ones that are relevant to my design, and potentially Lily's if she has questions. But the biggest, basically, you have defined and undefined centers in human design, and all the different centers represent different energies and like areas of life, kind of what how you operate. And so when you have undefined centers, you're more susceptible to conditioning around you. You're more susceptible to feeling others' energies through those centers based on whatever they represent. And so it can feel harder and more challenging in those undefined centers to know your truth. And for me, the biggest center that I have, well, there's two, but the biggest one that I have the most conditioning around is the G center. And the G center, because it's undefined for me, the G center is the center that represents your identity, your sense of identity, and also your sense of direction in life. And so when I was relearning, I should say, because I've known this for so long, but it just hit different this time. Basically, when you have an undefined G center, it's so much easier for you to feel like you're lost in life, especially around career. It's also so much easier for you to tie your identity onto external things, specifically with career and love relationships, which has been a huge theme for me like my entire life. My boyfriends, like I've always had a boyfriend. I mean, I've healed this a lot, but when I was younger, I always had to have a boyfriend. And I in reflecting on it, I realized it was because it was like I was attaching to that person and being like, okay, this is a part of who I am. And it was like stabilizing me in that way. And then also in congruence with that is this thing about life and the life path. And people with an undefined G center tend to feel like, I don't really know what my life path is. I don't really know where I'm going. And so that combined with being a manifesting generator, it just made so much sense to me as to why I'm all over the place all the time. And I'm constantly trying so many different things. I'm constantly trying so many different hobbies. I'm constantly trying so many different activities. And in the curriculum, it was like, you are meant to try so many different hobbies and so many different things and have your hands in so many different things. And like, it's okay if they don't stick. Your path is meant to just be so sporadic. And this has been something that I've really struggled with because I'm like, where does the level of discipline come in? Because I see people like my partner, for example, he has a defined G center in human design, and people with defined G centers just tend to like, they know what they like, they know what they want in life, and they just like are on a more set path with it. And they know what their passions are. And I'm definitely a passionate person, but like for me, my passions have been shifting and changing. And I see him and he has these certain passions that he's so consistent with. Like he's so consistent about it. And I've always been like, why don't I operate like that? And I'm like not meant to. And it's so much easier like to say I can grasp that than to actually grasp it. But I don't know. I just had this moment where I was like, wow, I understand why I go and I try something once and then I never want to do it again. And then, or I do it for like 2 or 3 times and then I'm like, I just have no desire to go back. No desire whatsoever. And I always tell myself, I'm like, why did I even try it in the first place? Like, why did I waste my time? And it's like, I didn't waste my time. There was something there in it for me, whether it be big or small. And that has really given me more permission to just allow myself to lean into when I want to try things and when I want to try them, but also not have expectations on what they need to look like and trust that it's a part of my path. And that, like, again, that in combination with being an MG, it's hard to manage. Like, I am so all over the place all the time and like constantly having different interests and different passions and different I have a lot of hobbies and I'm just meant to be that way. And so that was really, really insightful. And then also just not having to like know what my life path is because I really don't. I really don't. And I think a lot of people feel that way, but with having an undefined G center, it almost is like it takes a little bit more to really come into that like knowing of, okay, like what do I want? What do I like? Because then there's the identity piece as well. And so attaching my identity to things external outside of myself has been a big revelation as of the last year. Like when I let go of my business, I realized my whole identity was, oh, well, I have a business. That was my whole identity. Then I latched onto my spirituality because I didn't have that anymore. And then I kind of let that, like, realized what I was doing with my identity and spirituality. And I stepped back and got into a more grounded place with it. And then I was starting to do it to my relationship. And I'm just like, why am I constant? And it was actually something that my partner reflected to me. He's like, have you ever noticed, like, you get really, your identity gets really enmeshed in things? And I was like, oh. And it was just, it's just been this like really big unraveling. And there's been so many different things that I've been doing and different personal development avenues that I've been going down to help me with understanding like who I am. And that's still something I'm exploring. And it's not easy. And I was talking about this with my partner because he was like, "Well, I feel like I've really had to do, he's like, I feel like I've struggled with that at times." And I'm like, yeah, this isn't to say that people with defined G centers won't struggle with this. It's just more that they will always have like an inner connection or like sense of like, okay, I at least know where I'm going in life. Like I have some sense of that, or I at least know who I am, some sense of that. Whereas people with undefined tend to be a little bit more like shit's hitting the fan. Like I have no idea who I am. And so they just have to work toward it a little bit more. But it's not to say that like people, I think you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah,
That
definitely. I think, yeah, the G center is like such a cool center to me because I'm also defined. So I'm like your partner, I'm defined. And, I think that it would be even easier for you to reflect how I come up or how I like present as defined versus me to tell you how I present as defined. Because as your partner said, I have definitely gone through periods of time where I have been like, who the F am I?
yes.
And I mean, I've definitely gone through a lot, with my illness and my health journey. I mean, that was a huge shattering of ego, identity. All of that was just like broken on the floor. However, I really think that it's in the eyes of the undefined G center that can reflect the energy of what it really feels or looks like from the outside to be defined. And I can like feel as I'm like saying that and as I was listening to you, I can feel the difference between my defined G and your undefined G. I can feel that in the energy. It's not necessarily about me even being like, yeah, like I'm 100% certain of who I am. Like, it's me. What's up? Like, it's not really about that. It's like an energetic quality. And I really think it's one of your gifts to like reflect that for the defined people. Like, hey, you actually do know where you're going. Like, I can see it, I can feel it. And so it's like when those undefined G's like get up in their head, or I'm sorry, defined G's get like up in their head and they're like, I don't know who I am. Someone else can look at them and be like, yeah, you do. Like, yeah, you do.
This is such a good point because that is actually in the curriculum of the program. They're like the biggest gift that people with undefined G centers have is the ability to look at people with defined G centers and reflect their life path and their literally like verbatim what you said. To be able to reflect their life path and also to be able to reflect like their passions, like we can just see it all. And yeah, you literally just hit it on the head. And that's what I was going to say. We were briefly chatting before we hit record. And Lily had mentioned something about how I reflected something to her, something that she was going through personally. And she called me and she was like, yeah, you reflected that to me. And it like really like got me back on track. Like you said something like that. And I was like, that was literally like my undefined G center and like your defined G center coming together. And then you just said that and you're just like, so yeah, and just the fact that you were able to pick that up without even like cognitively knowing it is an energy. It really is an energy. And that is something that like I've had to reflect to my partner a few times too, like is the same thing is like, I'm like, wait, actually, like you're so consistent in all these ways though. And he's like, oh yeah, like actually you're right. And so it is like they mentioned in the program, they were like, yeah, people with undefined G centers make really good life coaches. They make really like they just can see the direction that people are going in when people can't see it themselves.
Oh, yes. Yeah, because I have clients who are undefined Gs and they really struggle with the identity piece, like really struggle with it. And I've like it's just funny because I don't feel like I really struggle with identity, like I would say it's just not so much of a concept for me as it is for my clients who are undefined, where like it's almost like feels like almost like their mission to like find out what their identity is, whereas for me, it's not something that was ever really like a strong concept for me. I would say in adolescence, that was more of a thought in my mind because I feel like we're kind of like coming into adulthood and there's a lot of like finding ourselves for everyone in that time. Yeah, but more so in my life, yeah, there hasn't been as much of a focus on identity other than those very specific junctions in my life where I just got kind of like the rug like ripped out from under me type of idea. And it's just like, whoa, what is happening? So I think that it's so interesting the interplay between the two, especially within like client coach relationships and friendships, because yeah, I mean, it's just how I see it is like the defined G centers are just kind of like on this like straight path, like kind of like head down a little bit, like, going down the path. And then they're like, what am I doing? And then the undefined G centers are like, you're good. You're still on the path. And then they're like, oh yeah, right. Okay. And then they just like keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought this up.
And that's the nuance. What you said is you're like, yeah, I feel like, you said there have been times in your life where you're like, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I'm doing, but you don't struggle as much with the identity piece. It's like, that's the nuance piece. That's the big piece is, and then you're mentioning your clients that have undefined G's and how much of a struggle identity is. Like, that was like the biggest thing for me. I just felt so validated because I was like, this has been a big theme that's been coming up for me as identity the past year with, especially with like letting go of my business and being like, who am I? And I still feel like I'm like, I don't even know like who, like I know what I value and everything, but it is really just like coming into myself and realizing that my identity is not defined by anything around me or by my circumstances. And that is a big piece that I think is harder to grasp for people with undefined G centers. And so this is just something that, again, if this is really hitting a chord with you as you're listening, going and looking up your human design is, even just finding out if you're defined or undefined in your G center could be really helpful if you really struggle with identity or feeling like you don't know where you're going in life.
Yeah. No, this like the G center is like a huge, it's like because it's the solar plexus and like the solar plexus is like the center of us. And so from what I've seen with my clients, like it's a revolving concept that just like continues to cycle back through. And I think it's just like part of it's not something that's ever going to be like totally finished or like totally fixed or, like I think it's going to be like part of your life in some way, for probably most of your life. And I think that can be such like a powerful thing as long as you're like aware of it and like know how to handle it versus
Mm-hmm.
internalizing it as something's wrong with me. Like, why don't I know what I'm doing? And one thing that I've felt around this as well is like the importance of being fluid when it comes to your identity and like how much of a power move that can be.
Yeah.
And it's like you meeting a new side of yourself every day. Like you make a new friend and you're like, where did this side of myself come out? And then you go to an event and you're like, wow, never seen that part of me before. And I feel like that could be, if you're listening and you have an undefined G, could be a reframe for you to like step into more self-love around it.
Oh my God, I'm so glad you brought that up because I was just thinking about that this morning because I was thinking about how, for those listening, I'm a dancer and I this hobby that I have, it's called Brazilian Zouk dancing, and it's just like a completely different culture. and I was out dancing last night. And I was thinking about how I was out dancing last night and what part of me that brings out versus like the part of me that comes and jumps on the recording and like starts talking about all of this like really deep shit. And I'm just like, and I was literally thinking about it and I was like, wow, I feel like I'm kind of different around like it's kind of based on who I'm around, but it's not me being untrue to myself. It's like different sides of me and different components of me. And that is another aspect of having an undefined G center versus a defined G center. Like people that have defined G centers tend to show up more consistently in like one type of way than people with undefined G centers. And that doesn't make people with undefined G centers like people pleasers or like not being authentic to who they are, as long as it feels like you are being who you are when you're around those people. There's just different facets of you. It's a little bit more pronounced than people with defined G centers. And it's so crazy that you brought that up because I was literally thinking about that this morning. And I was just like, it's okay to have like my mind wants to put me into one box. And I was like, it's okay to be a different part of like myself in different around different people and in different situations, because no matter what, like both of these aspects of myself are true to who I am.
Yeah.
And that was
I love that.
that was like really big because I was like, how can I be this type of way and then this type of way? And I was like, well, I am.
I just am.
Just am.
One thing I feel called to share around this too, and I'm wondering if they speak about this in Dayluna class or like if you have experience with this, but as an undefined G center, so like I feel like that's really a strength for you, like embracing like many different sides of yourself based on the context, the people that you're with, the situation, the event, whatever it is. And at the also, I think there's a discernment piece that like needs to be definitely implemented with the open G, because from what I've seen is like, no matter what you do with an open G, like you are going to be influenced by your environment. And so it's up to you to choose your environments. You know what I mean? Like, don't go hanging out in an environment that you don't want to be in, like based on who you want to be, you know? So I think that there's like such a beautiful exploration in terms of the embracing multiple sides of yourself, but there's also a discernment piece where it's like, okay, I know myself. I know that no matter what I'm going to do, or no matter what I do, I'm going to be somehow influenced by this environment to express a side of myself that wants to come forward. And it's up to me to discern which environments are going to bring out the parts of me, the pieces of me, the sides of me that I want to be in, that are like my highest self, or that are embodying the qualities that you value. You know, you're saying that you feel strongly connected to your values. So I don't know, I'm wondering how you feel about that.
Okay, this is huge. I'm loving this. You're bringing up so many good points. This is so great. Okay, so yes, they do talk about it in the Dayluna, in the program that I'm in. And the example that they brought up was, since the program is specifically around career, they brought up how people with undefined G centers are especially susceptible to feeling toxicity in a work environment. Like very big. And this is where the discernment comes in and also like self-responsibility of like, okay, I feel this toxicity, like I really feel it. Am I going to play with it? Am I going to engage with it and let that become a part of me because I'm engaging in it? Even if I don't feel like that's aligned with my values or who I am, I'm still engaging in it. And so that's where you have to, okay, discern like what am I feeling right now? And like, am I going to continue to be in this, or am I going to pull myself out of it and put myself in a better environment, which is like what Lily said, that's going to bring out the highest aspects of myself and like who I really want to be. And now let's say if there are instances where like you can't just quit your job tomorrow and there's toxicity all around, it's like, okay, then how do you set boundaries? How do you remove yourself from the parts of it that are toxic so that you can be productive and do what you can, get the job done, and so on. And this is where boundaries are really key, because even for me within the dance culture that I'm a part of, there are many aspects of it that do not align with my values. And like, these are things that I've talked to Lily about that I won't go into detail. However, I have had to set very strong boundaries with people within the community, with just, you know, the people that I'm like, understanding like who I'm associating myself with within the community, and being very vocal about what my values are, because it's important, and not dancing literally with the aspects of it that are not who I am, because that's not going to be that, like, I can feel that. And I'm actually very, it's the more that I'm talking about it, I'm so sensitive to it, more so than like other people that I know that have defined G centers that are in it. And I'm understanding why. Like, I'm understanding why. It's because my undefined G center can feel it so prominently. And I'm just like, that is not what I don't want that. And so, yeah, you can be like, you even, I mean, I think everyone is a product of their environment, but even more so for undefined G centers. And so it's really the discernment piece and understanding, do I just need to set boundaries within that, or do I need to remove myself completely from the situation?
Yeah, I feel like everything you just said is like the empowered version of the undefined G, because I mean, this isn't to scare anyone, but like having an undefined G can be a little bit dangerous if you aren't ready to step into your discernment. You know, it's like, it's just a classic example of falling into the wrong crowd and like, you know, all of a sudden being one of the wrong crowd. And it's like, wait, how did I get here? And I guess this is me now, you know, like it can be, I can see how that could manifest if the discernment is not in place, because the visual that I was like kind of seeing around this is, it's not like with an undefined G that you're just like a leaf blowing in the wind and like you're just going to be influenced in whatever way. You're totally just hands off, like you don't have any control. Like you do still have control because you're still the one putting yourself in the situations, and it's just up to you to like choose your situations that allow you to like explore yourself in really really like juicy, beautiful, expansive ways that bring out new sides of yourself that you didn't even know existed. So such like, I just think it's such, this is like such an interesting topic. In terms of like the whole body chart, I'm just like, the G
Yeah.
center has been such a focal point for me with my work with clients. So like that's, I'm just, yeah, loving everything you're saying.
Wow. And I'm loving everything that you're bringing up within it. It's just, this is just, it is such a huge piece. I mean, there's a reason why it was this center, because we learned, I mean, I learned more about my other undefined centers, but it was this center that shook me. It just shook me. And I was just really able to fully receive it and fully see myself and see myself reflected in it, and really be truthful and honest with myself about where I struggle and what that looks like in my life, so that I can take that more empowered version, that more empowered stance around it, because like, this is something that I'm going to be living with for my whole life. And again, anything in human design can be turned into a gift and empowerment. It's just all about how you work with it.
Definitely. And I mean, me as a defined G, like I, for like, I would never, um, just, I have many weaknesses, right? But one of them is not like falling into crowds. Like I just don't, um, it just never seemed like energetically available for me, even if I tried. And there were times when I did try, there was never really an opportunity for me to like lose my way in that specific way. And so I'm just sharing that as a defined G center. You know, if you're listening and you're a defined one and you're like, oh, like I never really struggled with that, you know, that could definitely be why. And that was never one of my specific struggle points, because I always just felt like it was hard. Honestly, it was more a challenge for me to morph, right? It was more of a challenge to morph than to stay central, like in my self identity, whatever word you want to choose. And so that in and of itself can be isolating, you know, and that can be a challenge too. And that was for, I would say that side of it was more of a challenge for me. So it's just like goes to show kind of the opposite sides of the coin.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that that's that's just such a good point, and it's so interesting because I really see that in you. Like,
Mhm.
be it from being around you and getting to know you, I see that in you. Like, I see how you, yeah, you energetically are not available for that. And like, I keep bringing up my partner, but it's the same for him. Like, because he has that defined G, like he is not going to associate with like people and things that he doesn't want to associate with. And that is for, for undefined G centers, I feel like we kind of need to try things a little bit more than the defined G. And so I think that that's something to really allow, because for me, it's like let yourself taste things. And then when you get that ick, it's like, okay, and don't shame yourself for trying it though. Like, you had to taste it to get the ick. Like, you had to. So, and it's okay that like it doesn't make someone with a defined G center who like wouldn't do that, because like I feel like I do that and like my partner doesn't, and then I find myself being like, well, why did I even like have to explore that? And it's like, this is why. Like, I had to get the ick, where it's like people with defined G centers, like they just don't even need to try that. They're just like, no, like I just know. And
Yeah.
so really allowing yourself, like if you do have an undefined G center, to like let yourself explore and let yourself be let down, if
Mhm.
what you're exploring isn't what you thought it would be. And don't compare yourself to other people when like there's nothing wrong with you you
Mm.
know
Yeah, and one more reflection for you, Jess, and other people that I know who have undefined Gs, is that it's such an amazing quality to easily fit into a crowd.
Mm.
Um, I just want to say that because I have not felt that way in my life. And sometimes I kind of wish that that was like more something that, I could do. And I have friends who it's just like, they meet anyone and they just hit it off, and it's just like off to the races. And I mean, don't get me wrong, very friendly. I'm very friendly. Like, I'm a friendly person. I have a lot of friends and, I have a lot of connections, but like there's just a different energetic quality to it where like I'm not for everyone. And yet it's like people with the undefined G, I feel like maybe are just like really they have that openness. And so there's like the bridge can be built like quite more easily, I feel like. And that there's a gift. There's a gift to that because it can feel I mean, in my experience, sometimes it can feel a little isolating, because it's like, not for me, not for me, not for me. And there's no in between. Whereas for you, for others who have undefined Gs, there can be like, it's like a mixing pot, and you can experience a lot and you can like feel like part of it, quote unquote, part of it in a lot of different places. And so I just kind of wanted to reframe that too. Like, I think there's a really special gift there as well.
Yeah, thank you for that, because I think you're right. I agree. Because that
Mhm.
is a quality that I have. I do have that quality. And I think it's just a matter of using it in a way that's not exhausting or draining me, and that's also not like being really not being true to who I am, because that, and I
Right.
think that that's the discernment piece that we talked about earlier. But yeah,
Mm.
thank you for that. I think there's gifts
Yeah.
in both. There's gifts in both.
Yeah. Yes. And I'm sure all the undefined Gs are like, I would much rather know who I am and like have my life path set than like fit in, with a crowd based on
Yes.
your choosing. But I think that there is a lot of power in the choosing of your crowd and being like, yeah, like, this is my crowd and it's just working for you. Whereas, yeah, I think, like you said, there's definitely gifts to both sides. But I think, like anything else, it's like, what you experience, there's going to be an opposite to that experience. And so it's just like you said, what your willingness is to work with that.
Yeah. And for anyone with an undefined G center listening, it's like really allow yourself again to be in that exploration of like discovering who you are and what you like. And I just remember one time Lily said to me, we were talking about my spirituality. And I remember I was telling you that there were some things that were really appealing to me, personal development wise, that were not in the spiritual space at all. And you literally were like, I'm feeling really strongly for you that whatever you feel is like resonant. You said something like whatever you feel is resonant for you is spiritual for you, even if it doesn't have, even if it's not considered spiritual. Did we just see those balloons? Okay, for those listening and not watching the video, some balloons just went through my frame. So maybe the universe is celebrating with us. I don't know.
Oh my God, that was crazy. I think Jess has like a new computer and it's like up to speed with like all of the like, I don't know, extras. I don't know, but this happened before for us with like the thumbs up and stuff. But the balloons, never seen that. I think that was a ping.
That was a ping. I don't know. Maybe it was because I did this. I don't know. Anyways, okay, that was really funny. But Lily reflected that to me and it really hit home for me of like, wow. And that's been something I've really held on to. And it's clearly coming up right now for a reason for whoever needs to hear it, is like, you can be this spiritual being and on this spiritual path, but it doesn't have to be quote unquote spiritual tools and whatever that are helping you grow. Like they don't have to be labeled as that. And that goes for anything. And I think that's just especially true for people with undefined G centers. Like you can't put yourself into any sort of definition and just let it all come together, because you're going to find growth in the most random of places.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Woo. Okay. So that's the G center.